Well, my friends, it is the end of the decade. 2019 is about to come to a close, and 2020 is right around the corner. So I'm here to bring you my top 10 games of the decade. And what's so crazy about that is I've been on YouTube on this channel for basically the entire decade. GhostRobo was born in 2010, and now it's almost 2020. And no matter what anyone thinks of my channel, where it's been, where it's going, what has happened, I'm insanely proud that I've lasted this long, that it's still here to this day, and that in one way or another, still bringing people some laughs and some smiles with these videos. It hasn't been a full 10 years because I started in October of 2010, but hey, it's close enough. Every single game that is on my list, I played on my channel or played some of on my channel or played during the time of my channel, which is absolutely insane. So before we get to the list, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you so much for those of you who have been here for the entirety of this channel for the whole decade. Wow. Can't appreciate you enough. It's crazy to think that, I don't know, I knew that I would be persistent and I would push and I would make sure that I made it work, but I don't think I ever envisioned it lasting for 10 years. 10 years of gaming. Games have changed so much since I started in 2010. From the 360 era right up to the cusp of the Xbox era, the PlayStation 5 era. Games have changed. They've improved. They've grown. They've expanded. And in some ways, they've gotten a little worse. So this list reflects 10 years of gaming. Multiple generations, many different trends, tons of fads, and so many video games played. It wasn't anywhere near as hard as I thought to come up with my top 10, because not only are these phenomenal games, they're ones that I truly loved and still love, ones that had an impact, an effect. The experience of playing the game also factored in. How much fun and joy this specific title brought me was definitely a factor. And while I'm sure we'll disagree, especially as we near the top of my list, hey, it's all fun and games, and I hope you guys get a kick out of 10 years of GhostRobo, 10 years of gaming. I've played so many games. I've played them pre-release very early. I've played them at launch events. I've played them at DLC post-launch events. I've played games in so many different states and countries and styles and settings. It's been incredible. So hopefully this is a fun video. I'm going to go all out. I'm going to talk about these games as long as I want and give you my full take because, hey, it's been a decade. If there's ever a time to give a big, long video, it's probably right about now. So enjoy the list. Let me know your take in the comments down below. Which games are you shocked are on there? Which ones do you agree with? Which ones do you think I missed? And let me know your favorite game of the decade. If you had to pick one game, what game did you pick and why? I'll be in the comments. I want to read through and hear your responses. Which game is your favorite game of the last 10 years? That's, for me as a new 30-year-old, that is a whopping amount of time. It's a third of my life. I've been right here on this channel. And these are the games that made up the last decade, the last 33% of my entire existence. So hit that like button if you enjoy the video, and if you've enjoyed the last decade, I guess, make sure to grab some hot chocolate and get some popcorn ready because this is going to be good. The top 10 games of the decade, baby. Here we go. Alrighty then, let's get this show on the road. You got your snacks ready? You guys ready for a little, some surprise, some intrigue? Maybe some that you expect. I'm sure if you know me, if you've paid attention over the last decade, you probably could guess at least a few of these. But before we get to number 10, a couple honorable mentions. The first honorable mention is more of an honorable oops, and it goes to Mass Effect 2, because I could have sworn Mass Effect 2 came out holiday 2009. In fact, the whole time I was making this list, I was sure that Mass Effect 2 was part of my last decade list, and no, Mass Effect 2 released in late January of 2010. What an odd release date for BioWare and EA to put that game out. I absolutely loved it. I adored it. It's so close to the cusp, and it was right on the cusp of my top 10. I decided to give it an honorable oops. I thought it was 2009. In fact, it was 2010. Phenomenal game, almost a full decade ago, and it made me a little sad that I haven't loved anything from BioWare in just about 10 years. Here's hoping the next decade really can bring that same Mass Effect 2 awesomeness back to the forefront. Now, my honorable mention, and I could make 10 of these. There's been, thousands of games that have come out, like literally thousands and thousands of games. The Switch has like 2,000 games, and that's only been a couple of years, and that's one platform. But I'll give one sincere honorable mention, and that is to L.A. Noire. a game that defined a channel, a game that helped set me up to even be able to do YouTube viably full time. It really was the spark that ignited everything for GhostRobo, and it's a phenomenal game. I love what they did with the motion capture. I love that it was a Rockstar game that took a totally different turn, a totally new twist on what they have done and what they've done since. I wish we would have gotten LA Noire 2 or whatever the Orient game was going to be. It never happened. It never materialized. And I don't know that Rockstar will ever touch on it again. Luckily, they did a version on the Switch, which was pretty cool. But I loved LA Noire. Just driving around that old-timey LA and solving the cases and having to read faces and interrogate people, ask the right questions, pick the right answers. It was just my kind of game. And it really also was such an experience because it was the first major game I covered on the channel. And somehow Rockstar back then let me keep it up, even though they were shutting everybody down. It was a stroke of luck, a phenomenal game, and the rest is history. And the rest is also the real list. So here we go. Number 10 is Super Mario 3D World. Now this is real interesting because Super Mario 3D World was my second favorite Nintendo game of the entire decade. So that tells you how diverse this list is. It's number 10 here when taking into account all games, but it's a phenomenal title. I never would have predicted when I played that this would be my favorite Mario game of the decade. It's not the 3D styling of Galaxy or Odyssey. It is a hybrid style. And when it first was announced, I was so worried. I played it at E3 and I was like, I don't know if I want this. It's bite-sized levels. There's a map and a board that you have to pick from. It's got multiplayer shoehorned in. Cat Mario, is this just for the memes? And instead, the game is masterfully created. I think sometimes when Nintendo finds a little bit of restriction, some self-imposed rules and regs, they're able to just drive straight down that lane and hit a home run. They absolutely nail the fun and the flair of Mario here. And the levels are so diverse and so creative, you're never doing the same thing for too long. The game also just goes and goes. There's special world after special world and collectibles that are fun and rewarding to grab. You unlock a new playable character, for goodness sake. That's the stuff of legend. If you think back to what you hope to do at the end of Mario 64, at the end of Mario Sunshine, a playable character is wonderful. And the fact that you can enjoy this with siblings or friends, parents, grandparents, significant others, just makes it all the much more fun. I love the bosses. I love the boards. As a massive board game fan, it's so cool to see how much creativity. It's almost like a Disney ride. Each board, each world, the map that you traveled around. I think that was dumb, but I love it. And I guess it's no coincidence that Super Mario World was my favorite of the initial Mario games, and Super Mario 3D World brings it back and holds the number 10 spot. It's a game I can play again and again, and perhaps it is because of that more bite-sized level nature that it is replayable for me. Someone who doesn't typically go back, I love to just say, oh, I remember that level. Oh, let's go check out the board. Let's play this boss. It's digestible, it makes sense, and I think the side-scrolling nature works better over the test of time than maybe the wide-open 3D controls, maybe the wide-open 3D styling. It'll be so interesting to see how Odyssey fares, over 5-10 years. It's a phenomenal game, but I honestly think for me, 3D World is better. I just love what they did. It's colorful, it's vibrant. I like those stamps, and I sure love being able to play as Rosalina. So number 10, Super Mario 3D World. Number 9 for me is Portal 2. Now, gosh, I would have thought Portal 2 would be higher, but we're talking a whole decade here, right? If you won Game of the Year, you still may not be good enough. Some of my games of the year aren't even on this list. There are titles that I thought were my favorite game of the year that didn't make it because some years had multiple. Portal 2, it is a sequel, and you're darn right it's a sequel. It takes everything Portal did and expands on it in a fantastic, phenomenal way. This was the era of Valve being just showstoppers. Remember the orange box, the Left 4 Deads, Portal 2, Half-Life. Maybe we'll have a resurgence with Half-Life Alyx. Perhaps they'll be able to find that groove again. But Portal 2 was magical. I think back to games that I still remember the trailers. I still remember moments. I still get chills when I think about the significant set pieces. And there's something about GLaDOS just coming back. And in that trailer, when she talks about it's been a long time, that gives me chills to this day. Breaking out of your apartment quarters, you and Wheatley winning the day, learning the history of Aperture and all the science behind the game. The puzzles are phenomenal, but what hooked me on Portal 2 was the world building. The fact that they created an entire awesome universe, that it wasn't just a puzzle game with a little bit of quirky charm, but there was more behind the curtain. Valve pulled back the puzzly curtain and said, you know what, beyond these portals, there is more. There's also a phenomenal cooperative multiplayer campaign that I love so much with my brother. We had such a good time. The graphics are fantastic. The ending is out of this world, literally. And I think it still holds up. The audio logs and the places you go, Potato, the elevators, it's just a remarkable experience. I love something like The Witness, but Portal 2 rises far above a game like that, even if the puzzles may not be as insanely clever, because it has a heart. It beats and it lives, and you fall in love with the world. And you'll notice that that means a lot to me as we trapeze across this list. Honestly, I wanted to put Portal 2 higher. It made a huge mark on me. It's a phenomenal game. I even have a hoodie. But it's a heck of a game, and number 9 is still a well-deserved spot. Number 8 for me is Dead Space 2. Now, this is an odd one because I was terrified of Dead Space. I remember being young, pre-YouTube, of course, and playing Dead Space 1 in the back room of my parents' house and being scared to death. At the time, my Xbox 360 was red ringing, so the game's graphics weren't looking all that great, but I still soldiered through. Oh my goodness, the jump scares got me. I was far more weak-willed. I wasn't used to the horror as I am now. You know, after you play enough of these games that people want you to play on YouTube, you kind of get used to it. You know where it's coming. It doesn't really spook you, and maybe that also just comes with age. But back then, Dead Space was terrifying, but so intriguing. The ideas there, the fact that the world felt so living and breathing, that they were bringing a BioShock type mentality to the world and to the ship, but in a creepy, twisted way. The lore behind that game is also superb. The marker, this cult, this thing that has such an effect on people, it's making them do terrible things to themselves and to others. And you move through the big space station of Dead Space 2, and it's got different elements that you want to know about, right? It's got where they eat and where they live and where the kids are and where they pray and where they play, and that's what I love about games. That's what I love about movies. Show me the world. Open the door and let me see deep into this universe. Make me feel like it's real. Make me feel like it existed far before I arrived. Not to mention that the mechanics are excellent as well. It takes the Resident Evil style, slow plotting character and ups the ante with some incredible weaponry. I love how grounded everything is in the fact that Isaac is an engineer. And in Dead Space 2, his mind's starting to get a little more twisted, and things are starting to get a little bit crazy. The chaos, the haywire nature of the storyline was super appealing. There are moments like when the projection or the imagination of your girlfriend descends into the elevator and screams in your face that will haunt me. The apartment buildings, the church with the bird-like raptor creatures, Isaac's sounds, his screams, the upgrade system. I love that the map is right in front of you. The ammo count is on your gun. Dead Space did so many things right. It's a shame that franchise hasn't been back in so long. I even liked 3. I liked 1. I think 2 is definitely the sweet spot and where it hit its stride, and it was a remarkable game that you wanted to keep playing even if you were horrified. And back then, my little scared self didn't want to continue, but I had to continue. Let's not even talk about the ending, the laser eye sequence. Who could forget the laser eye? It just has those moments. And when you focus down and make a linear story, and you design it, and you let the genius of creativity, of imaginative power show through, you get something that can be memorable. No matter how many hours I spend in a giant open world messing around with friends, those moments may be cherished for their laughs and for the camaraderie, but it won't be because the game did something that left a mark, at least for me. It's these titles that truly try to tell you something, weave a story, show you what they can create that I love. And Dead Space 2, it's eerie, it's creepy, and it's gosh darn good. Number 7 is Uncharted 4. Now, this was a hard game to slot because Uncharted 4 is phenomenal. It's always easier to fall in love with the first rather than the second, or in this case, the fourth, but Uncharted 2 to me is the one, right? That's what sort of set the bar for Naughty Dog, where they nailed it and everything was awesome and it did so much and the set pieces were insane. The train sequence, we all know it, we all love it. But I honestly think Uncharted 4 is a better game. The spectacle and the scale have shot straight up, and yet they don't sacrifice the genuine passion that oozes through every moment. The emotionality, the connection with the characters, and the slick gameplay is definitely better. I was a big naysayer of Uncharted 4. I was like, why does the series have to continue? Stop making more and more. It just looks like you're trying to bring elements of Tomb Raider and elements of this together and make it more of a shooter and, capitalize on The Last of Us and the brother and this and that. No, I was wrong. Uncharted 4 is phenomenal. Uncharted 4 is incredible. It may be Naughty Dog's best work to date. I wavered for a long time trying to weigh and evaluate this game and another Naughty Dog title, and it's very hard. It sure is hard, and I honestly think Uncharted 4 might be the better game. But in the course of a decade, it doesn't rank higher for me. It still, though, stands as the 7th favorite, best, top game of the decade. And I think it does things that, with set pieces and with attention to detail, they're so good at Naughty Dog of making every store, every window, every building feel so lived in, so realized. You can see things off in the distance. The variety is full on display here. You're starting to get an idea of what really makes my mind fall in love with the title, right? When there is that extreme diversity in level design and variety in what you're seeing on screen and a story that you can attach onto. It doesn't have to be a happy story, a sad story. It doesn't have to be about a family or about a monster. It can be anything, but it's about crafting a world that hooks you, that draws you in. And I can think of so many moments in Uncharted 4 that also genuinely surprised me. When you get to move around the timeline, when you get to investigate basically pirate islands, and it's almost like you stumbled upon a Disney animatronic village. You walked straight into Pirates of the Caribbean, and you're climbing clock towers, and you're high above, and you're injured, and you're at home with your wife, and Crash Bandicoot is there, and it's just brilliant from top to bottom. I hated when the game ended. I missed it. Those are the ones where you don't want it to end, that they've touched on something. And I thought about putting Horizon Zero Dawn on this list, but for me, Uncharted 4 earns the spot. And it's not that those two games were, one or the other are comparable, but I thought about these kind of games and where they slotted in the experience, and I compared these two because I love the mechanics of Horizon Zero Dawn, but the story, while intriguing and awesome, it didn't grab me and leave a mark in the same way. I definitely remember Aloy, but I don't remember feeling like I wanted her to win, like I wanted Nathan Drake to win, and I just didn't have the same extreme astonishment with the power and prowess that the designers put on display in Uncharted 4. It's a masterpiece. It's crazy that Naughty Dog does it again and again, and if Last of Us 2 is the best yet, then oh my gosh, look out. 2020 is going to be insane. Number 6 for me is God of War. The new God of War is a triumph. It takes so many different elements of gameplay and fuses them together in a way that never feels hamstrung, but feels like it just always was supposed to be like that. It brings difficulty and Dark Souls ideas into a heavy character action world, and yet somehow also nails the story. Here is the true, I think, separating factor of God of War. Cory Barlog decides to do a story about father and son, and it hits home even for those of us who aren't fathers. We're all sons, though. I mean, a son or a daughter, right? You have to be. And so I think there's something to tie into and attach onto for everyone. I love the combat. I love the side tasks, the extra activities, the slight openness, but still the dedication to linearity. That's something that you'll notice in these games as well. Uncharted 4 has those open moments. Mario 3D World does try to open things up beyond the traditional 2D scope. God of War, likewise. Even Portal 2 for a puzzle game really goes beyond, but it doesn't stray too far. It doesn't try to be an online-only, games as service, do-it-all 100-hour experience. No, God of War is just tight. It is crisp the entire way through. The characters are enthralling. The twists and turns of the story are incredible. And the ending is one to really wait for. God of War 2. When's that game coming out? Oh my gosh, is it going to look insane on PS5. I also think the variety of environments was pretty impressive. And once you finish the story, you can go back and explore for more. Fighting against the Valkyries was some of the most insane boss battles I've had. You have to be near perfect. I love how you can expand your axe, build out the movesets. I love upgrades. I love that you can tweak your character to your liking, that you can grow and see that progression from start to finish. And boy, do I love that second weapon. Won't spoil it in case you haven't for some reason played it. Goodness, you gotta play God of War. It was easily the game of the year when it released in 2018, and it's one of the best games of the decade. It's incredible that they made such a great trilogy with God of War back on the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3, and yet they topped themselves by expanding the game and by being willing to take a risk. It's also important to note that this game goes from start to finish without cutting away. There aren't big time lapses. You're not gone from the characters. They're not magically in a new place. You follow them. And I think that's important. It attaches you to the characters. It's okay to have some breaks. It's okay to have cutscenes. But they do a lot of things to make sure that you feel a part of the story. And in a story where the main character is known for rage, anger, and violence, to create empathy, emotional connection, that is truly insane. And to back it up with great gameplay, how could you possibly merge such magical storytelling with magical gameplay? It's incredible. It's impressive. It's beyond brilliant. And God of War, Cory Barlog, an insane designer. We don't have too many of them left that you can look and say, wow, that guy is good. Or that girl is good. And he's one of them. It's an absolutely... the first time you fight one of those giant trolls, you're like, how am I going to do this? And before you know it, you're beating bigger and bigger creatures. Boss battles are insane. Individual encounters are still super fun. There's a weight to the weaponry. Every hit, you feel it. And you want to just swing that axe again, send the axe out, call upon your powers. There's chain ability, combo ability, everything flows. It is like a symphonic melody. It moves. You're dancing around the battlefield. You call in your son. The little anecdotes, right? The way that there's just this incidental dialogue as you're moving through the worlds. It's awesome. It's like audio logs, but from a actual living person instead of someone from the past. I didn't think of it that way when I first played, but if you look, they took audio logs and they made them in the moment. They made them real because of another character. Games love buddy characters, at least some do. And sometimes they're annoying, sometimes escorting is awful, but here it worked very well. And I did not want that guy to get hurt, did not want that little boy, even with what happens at the end. It'll be so cool to see what they do with Uncharted God of War 2. It'll be so crazy to see where things go. I'll also call out the fight against the unknown character when he first arrives at the beginning, and it's just like this Dragon Ball Z style battle of the gods in your front yard. So fun. And then when you return to the house, whew, yeah, God of War is legendary. And I don't know, I feel like it got a ton of love. It'll be interesting to see how much love it gets 5-10 years down the line. Same can be said for an Uncharted 4 or whatnot, Mario 3D World, but I think these games are ones that will cement themselves as some of the tent poles of our industry and of our hobby for years and decades to come. And that brings us to the halfway point. Games 10 through 6 are in the books, in the bag. Those expressions are always so funny to me because I always legit picture putting games in a bag. Anyways, number 5, ooh, Mario Kart 8. This game is the rare game I think it's darn near... I think it's perfect. I don't have a single complaint about Mario Kart 8. I love the game so much. I think the original is incredible. I think the DLC additions are incredible. It is the crispiest, purest form of Nintendo's gameplay mechanic prowess. It is the culmination of an excellent franchise in the best way possible. It appeals to me because it is effortless to play. I can take 6 months off, a year off, and come back and I know just what to do in Mario Kart 8 and 8 Deluxe on Switch. It's a masterpiece. I was so shocked when I first played, and you get to Mount Wario and the course isn't 3 laps, it's one continuous course that still ticks the lap marker, but it doesn't actually loop, it continues. And then they bring in Link and Hyrule, and they bring in Inklings, and they bring in Animal Crossing. It's an insanely awesome experience. It helps that I'm really good at it. It helps that I'm so competitive and I'm actually really good at it. Probably my best game, maybe. I don't know, perhaps. I like the online. It works pretty darn well. I had fun with tournaments, fun with friends, split screen, solo. They amp it up to 200cc. The DLC courses were so creative. Again, it's a great example of Nintendo bending but not breaking, right? They start to incorporate something new, different stylings for the courses, different universes within Nintendo's stable, but they don't go crazy. They still bring you the tried and true Mario Kart gameplay. The multiplayer modes are excellent as well. The character roster is awesome. Pour one out for Diddy Kong, but they have just about everybody else. They even included Tanuki Mario, The aforementioned Link, Inkling, it's so good. It's so good. Building the carts, customizing your pieces. You got to do the Yoshi bike, though. You got to do Rosalina on that Yoshi bike. Even Rosalina's biker outfit is so awesome and cool. Almost every course, it's the perfect medley of old courses that are tried and true and new courses that have become classics. Mario Kart 8 is the kind of game I think, like Super Mario Kart was for so long, where you'll play it a decade later and still love it. How do they top it? What do they do with Mario Kart 9? It helps me let me know that this game is so perfect because I don't know where they go from here. I don't think they'll ever go to a Nintendo Kart and change the name. It'll always be Mario Kart, but what does a 9 look like after all of that? More courses, a totally different set of courses, a different way of building the bikes, more customization, less customization. Go double dash again, triple dash, quad dash. I love this game because it is just perfect. There's not much else to say. You get it in your hands and you know, wow, this is the pinnacle of Mario Kart. It's the pinnacle of kart racing. It just feels like liquid gold in your hands. You know what to do, and it responds, and it's fun, it's vibrant, it's got great graphics. It hits every little thing perfect. Number 4, Dark Souls. Dark Souls, baby, a game that defined an era, not only for the industry, but for me. Playing Dark Souls was a nightmare. I quit so many times, you guys. If you follow along my Dark Souls series, it was very popular and very loved, but I had a psychotic time with that. I quit so many times. I couldn't do it. I couldn't deal with the anger. I'm not one to throw controllers, but boy, did I get pissed off at some of those bosses. And yet I loved it. And yet the challenge, the task it put before you was so daunting and yet so tantalizing. Since then, it's become a genre. There are so many other great games. I like 2 a lot. Bloodborne's great, even 3. Not the biggest fan of Sekiro, but it has spawned so many lookalikes and clones, and great games in their own right, too. It doesn't have to be bad just because it's a copy, or it's borrowing. My game of the year this year is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and we wouldn't have that kind of combat and that styling without Dark Souls. You create this basically storyless character and then come up with your own story. It is the one time where the player experience, for me, is enough. You know how I said I really love it when the designers give you their tell? They tell you, they weave it for you, they give you their creativity, their genius. Well, here is one where your experience is enough for me because it is so insane. And at the time when Dark Souls 1 arrived, I know there had been Demon Souls, but that had such a limited following, and it was such a punishing game. Dark Souls found a way to tweak it enough to bring it mainstream and make it work. But at the time, it was so difficult and unlike anything I'd really played that I felt like a master, a champion when I defeat a boss. The Capra Demon at night, I'll never forget. I remember I was supposed to wake up early to go to a Detroit Lions football game, and I was fighting the Capra Demon, and I was determined to beat it before I went to bed. And it was like 2, 3 in the morning. I'm screaming, beating the Capra Demon, waking my family up in the house. But I was victorious. And then you go back and you fight the Capra Demon, and you're like, oh, no big deal. That's the beauty of Dark Souls. You grow and you grow and you grow, and you gain skill and you gain skill and you gain skill, and you improve to the point that previous impossible tasks seem like cake. Taking candy from a baby. Goodness gracious. The Poisonous Swamp, Blight Town. These are moments I'll never forget. It is memorable beyond belief for being the first, and also for being the standout, and for teaching me so much about things I liked in games, and that I do like difficulty. Not when it's obnoxious or obtuse, but when it's there to challenge you with skill. I like that I have to rise to the occasion and get good. At least in that way, in a way that feels manageable and feels beatable. I'm never going to go win 500 Fortnite rounds in a row or be the best CSGO player, but I can beat Dark Souls. And I so respect what they did and how it really did set the stage for a decade of gaming and change things. It'll never be the same since Dark Souls. I cannot wait to see what Elden Ring is like. The fact that they're going open world. You know, Dark Souls did something interesting where you could kind of traverse around and tackle things a little bit open-ended. Dark Souls 2 experimented with that even more, but it does retain some form of grounded structure and pathing. Again, I respect that. It gave me so many highs and so many lows, but in the end, when you win that game, no matter how frustrating it's been, no matter how long it's taken, you know you accomplished something great. And I feel like it was so rewarding to beat Dark Souls when I eventually did. So many insane bosses, insane musical numbers, crazy last-ditch efforts, frustration when you know that you pushed it too hard, you're too aggressive, you should have been patient. And also I'm left-handed, so I strafe the incorrect way that the game expects you to go, which makes things much harder for me. Changing weapons, building your character, putting down skill points, grinding souls, losing them all. It is a remarkable time. And I love it. Number 3 is the other Naughty Dog title. It's The Last of Us. What a brilliant roller coaster. I am the weird one that thinks the gameplay was also excellent. I know a lot of people think the story and the characterization, the graphics are all brilliant and beautiful, but they don't so much like the shooting. I really love the shooting. Last of Us is the game that cemented for me that I actually like third-person, character-driven adventures more than I like first-person. It was revelatory for me in that way. I attached on to Joel and Ellie, of course. The opening is insane. The clickers are haunting. The giraffes are brilliant. David is a menace, and Ellie's reaction is one that shocks you. Changing playable character, moving across the country, having a real goal, and seeing it be accomplished. It's not something like, oh, we have to defeat the evil Lord who descended from the heavens above. And it's not something super nebulous. It's, you gotta cross this country and survive. Everything is orchestrated so well. It's a beautiful world. You want to know more. What other kinds of enemies are there? What other kinds of infected? What did these people do before this, after this? Where are they gonna go? How did it all come together? And then the other part is I love the multiplayer. It's a shame Last of Us 2 isn't getting multiplayer. Good on Naughty Dog for seeing the reception and being committed to bringing Last of Us multiplayer back in some form after the release of the single-player game. But boy, I love that initial multiplayer. It's so different. It's unique. It's not your everyday shooter. It's a little clunky in some ways, but the fact that you're collecting resources and working with a team and you got to be kind of slow and stealthy. I loved this multiplayer. I loved it so much. I don't really get into multiplayer all that often, but here I found a home and I was obsessed with it for a while. It just felt satisfying. It wasn't purely just crazy in-your-face Twitch deathmatch gameplay. There was a little more to it, and I think I like that pacing. But being able to exist in this world long after the story player saw its curtain close was wonderful, because I didn't want Last of Us to end. It again has a buddy character and does it so well, like God of War. God of War probably learned a lot from The Last of Us, making a buddy character not annoying, not cumbersome, not a chore, but really brilliant. It's funny, there are 3 games on this list that have a buddy character almost the entire time. I guess buddy characters are something I really like. Maybe it's because then you get even more characterization. You learn more about the character. It's less of you and more of them. I think that's a bullet point that I appreciate and appeals to me when the character is defined. I don't like putting myself into the character. I like the character rubbing off on me. I like learning about them, hearing about them, seeing how I can connect and relate, not the other way around. And Last of Us, like we can talk. I mean, it's been talked about, it's been discussed. You know, this game is amazing, incredible. It is a phenomenal work of art. It is a masterpiece, and I do think Uncharted 4 is probably a better game all around, but Last of Us left a bigger mark. It's more memorable. I cannot freaking wait for Last of Us 2. It looks so gritty, so intense. The way that they have rendered everything, modeled everything. Enemies call out names as if they're hurting and sad, and there's loss, and make you feel like you are this brutal murderer. I don't know what Ellie's goals are, but it sure seems like it's going to be absolutely visceral. You can go from completely prone to standing up. I hope there's a ton of new infected. I hope the upgrade system's a little more fleshed out. It looks like it. Last of Us was one that had insane buzz, took a long time to come, and delivered. Naughty Dog. They could give a masterclass in game design. They are experts in their craft, and Last of Us is at the top of the heap. Number 2 for me, I feel like this one's going to be weird for some people, because in hindsight, it's hated by many. But BioShock Infinite threw me for a complete loop, and I loved every second of it. I was talking about this game for weeks beyond its completion. I burned through it and then could not stop trying to figure it out. What did it mean? All the references, all the connections to past titles, the lighthouse, The twins, Elizabeth, what did it all mean? Where was it going? What was it trying to convey? Let the circle be unbroken. Booker. I don't think that the setting or the enemies are as strong as BioShock 1, but that's not part of this decade. For me, BioShock Infinite is stellar because it gave me a thrilling mental journey. I thought so much about this game. It truly came alive beyond its code. It breathed life into the real world by its power. And that to me was just an insane experience, something unlike anything else on this list. The amount of time I dedicated to researching and theories and putting together my own theories. Never done it before. Never felt that intrinsically tied to a world. I love Irrational. I'm so sad they're gone. I hope the new BioShock, when it comes out in a couple of years, can live up to the legacy. It shocks me that so many people don't like BioShock Infinite. There are moments that are not the greatest, but there's also magical ones. The Disney-like ride. There's a part that's like an animatronic Disney ride within the game. When the sound boys startle the heck out of you. Yeah, you don't really ever get to fight Songbird and the Handyman, or they aren't even half as cool as the Big Daddies. But there are still some wonderful levels in this world. The Zachary Comstock, the way that they built this place out, it is a living, breathing world. It has a heart. It's been beating for a long time, and you stumble upon, from the moment you pick up the baseball to the last vigor you chug. It is a world unlike any other that they have created and they have crafted from start to finish and thought of everything along the way. They make sure that it's a world that it feels lived in, that you can experience and enjoy and be a part of and take with you. It sounds silly, but games that I love merch from really made a mark. And BioShock's something I love merch from. I bought a giant canvas of Infinite, hoodies, Funko Pops. You know, there are things I wish were better. But this game also brought us Burial at Sea. This game also brought us the unification of two worlds. This game also brought us such incredible moments. Oh, it's so good. It shocks me and saddens me that people have grown to hate it, grown to dislike it. Maybe Elizabeth doesn't work out in the best way possible, but she's still a cool companion. I think it's hard because the game initially was supposed to be so much more dynamic. The early E3 demos were out of this world, and they weren't able to fully achieve that vision. But what they still put pen to paper is remarkable and left me thinking and loving it for so much time. It made a mark, and every game on this list has made a mark on me in a different way. And BioShock Infinite did it to a level with its lighthouse. Oh gosh, even the countdown. Like I talk about chills with Portal 2. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When you ascend to the skies above. It's so brilliant. It's a chilling moment. You're baptized, and what does that all mean? Goodness gracious. I can't say enough good things about BioShock Infinite. It's crazy to me that we have almost gone a decade without a BioShock, and we probably will go a full decade without a BioShock. It's also just like gameplay-wise, I like the shooting in BioShock. I like the powers. I like the vigors. I really like that you can pick everything up. You know, I like so much of that. I think it's an insane achievement, and I miss it. And I wish it would come back. So many of these franchises are missing in action. Dead Space, BioShock. I mean, Mario Kart 8 at this point. But it'll live on forever. BioShock is my favorite game of all time, and so it's only fitting that BioShock Infinite is my number 2 of the last decade. Number 1 is Evolve. Hate me, disparage me, click off the video, whatever. I am going to be tried and true to myself, and this is the game that I love the most this decade. The entire experience was wondrous, unlike any other game in my lifetime. I had got so invested and involved with the community, with the developer, with the game itself, with the people who made it possible, with the people who played, and I still play it to this day. I still make videos on it to this day. It's still so fun. You know why? Because Turtle Rock Studios and 2K found a way to bring you being the boss to a game in a way that made sense, wasn't gimmicky, and was super fun. They botched the launch, they botched the DLC, they botched the marketing. I do believe that if Evolve released today, it would be hated far less. It would not receive anywhere near the vitriol it unfortunately was doomed to handle. Because now with microtransactions and games as services, it would make sense to have DLC in the way that they launch it and the way that they release it. But back then, it was blasphemous to see them do something in such a way. But set all that aside, because we've lived that. It's in the past. What matters is the game at its core, and you can say that there isn't a lot of content there. You can say it's lacking single player, but the multiplayer component is outstanding. Being the Kraken, the Behemoth, the Gorgon, the Goliath, the Wraith is an experience nothing has come close to. We've seen games try in the vein of Friday the 13th, Dead by Daylight, the last year. In a way, Hunt Showdown, you don't get to be the monster there. But even in these games where you do get to be the monster, it's not like Evolve. It doesn't control as crispy. It doesn't control as menacingly. You don't get to evolve it in that way and grow and gurgle and power up and level up. And there's so many awesome hunters. It may lack lore, but it has personality. It really does. It's a game where I loved collecting the skins. Call me stupid, but I loved getting all the different skins. It's not stupid if it's fun for you. It may not be the best game ever, I know that. It's not a 10 out of 10, but I love it. And it opened so many doors for me. It created so many opportunities for me. Gaming, I got to play in tournaments, and I got to meet cool people, and I got to share my love across a t-shirt and wristbands, and I got to go meet the developers and help them play test new versions. And maybe you can say I'm jaded because I had all of this access, but what tells you I'm not is the game is long dead and gone, and I still play it. Nobody's telling me to. No one from Turtle Rock talks to me. There's no tournaments. It's been years, and I still play it because I love the core gameplay. I play against the AI. I can't even play against people. I can't even play against human players, but I love it so much I continue to play the game. It is my comfort food. It is my comfort game. It is the one I love. It is of all these games the one that I've played the most, and I continue to play and will continue to play into the next decade. I pray for an Evolve 2. I hope Back 4 Blood is awesome from Turtle Rock. I hope that anything can give me the feeling, the sensation, the addiction that I had to Evolve, can make me wrapped up and immersed in the game like Evolve. I'm tough to please. I'm picky. Sometimes I'm hard-headed. I like what I like. If something is too liked, I almost don't like it. I want something to touch me in the next decade the way Evolve has. It's so fun to commentate. It brought out this shoutcaster personality in me that I didn't even know existed. It brings me joy to play the game, to talk about the game, to commentate the game, to be involved with the game. And I genuinely think it is a great game. I think it is underrated. I think it was criminally overlooked when it released. I think it was trying to do too much. It was too difficult to bring together 5 players in an asymmetrical multiplayer match where everyone had to coordinate to make it work. And they tried to remedy this with Stage 2 by allowing everyone to dome, bringing the game to PC, free to play, and it still failed. The new monsters were outstanding. Behemoth was a train wreck when I first saw him, but he comes to the game and he's my favorite monster to play. The feeling of rolling into this ball and smashing your fists and leveling the terrain, shooting fireballs, or being Gorgon swinging through the air like Spider-Man and spitting acid beneath you. Wraith teleporting and utilizing a supernova to just shock and awe the entire group of hunters. Goliath, Godzilla himself, recognized and realized for a new generation. Kraken flying above the Cthulhu Moose, shocking. Lightning Strike, one of the most satisfying attacks ever when you hit it. The maps, the modes, there aren't a ton of them. But when you're in that arena and the dome drops and it's monster against men, it's pretty incomparable. Nothing has lived up to Evolve. The sneaking, the stealthing, the surprise, the fights, the recovering. Gosh, that was a great game. And so many people miss it. It's not just me. The game sold millions. You have to remember that even though it didn't take on the world like Fortnite, it really was a success. It sold millions of copies. It may not have had great word of mouth or positive buzz, and it lost a lot of fan love very quickly, unfortunately. They didn't screw up. But it's still a good game, and I wish that it wasn't clouded by its marketing mess. The underlying being the boss idea is one that I've dreamed of since I first saw Bowser. I wanted to be Bowser. Yeah, in Mario Odyssey you get to be Bowser for a little bit, but in Evolve you get to be the monster as much as you want. And you get to wreck opponents. You get to go online and take it to them. I love that you can play with friends as the 4, or you can play solo. It doesn't matter. It's a multiplayer game where it requires friends, but if you don't have friends, you still can enjoy. The monster is still there for you. picking the perks, gaining them in match, evolving and spending your skill points. There is a lot involved, a lot at stake. It requires skill and tactics. It requires patience and aggression. Nothing else has come close in this way. It's not for everyone. It's unique. It's different. It's lacking 100 hours of content in the way that we see now with open worlds and single players and multiplayers and battle royales and all the modes. But I've played that game for way more, again and again, because for me, gameplay reigns supreme. I do love story. I do love visuals. But what I want you to take away from this list more than anything is that gameplay reigns supreme. Worlds reign supreme. I love gameplay. There are some that on this list that don't have perfect gameplay, but they still have really good gameplay. They still have really good ideas. Building a world, making it feel alive. You want to be there. You want to be involved. You want to play, and then the controller fits in your hand, and the hands-on controller experience has to be awesome. And I think all of these games did that in their own way. I love being the monster. I'm not an aggressive dude. I've got a really kind heart. I'm passive as heck. But unleashing the Kraken, unleashing Behemoth, letting the Wraith run wild, watching Gorgon engulf every opponent. It was so awesome. And then the Hunters, man, one of my favorite moments. I'll end my Evolve talk with this story. I show up at E3 2014. I get invited to play this game called Evolve. I don't really know what's involved. I show up late. It's a tournament. It's a live session. And they want me to play medic. I hate medic. I've never really played medic in my life. I don't feel comfortable. It's such an important role. I get out there and I shine as Lazarus. The character is so intriguing. The game is so captivating. And I'm playing against Jericho, the Twitch streamer. And back then he is super, super obnoxious and yelling and screaming and screen cheating. And we still tied him. We still won one round each. It was so incredible. It was so fun. Daisy saved the day. And Phil Robb, the creator of the game, from behind told me that I played Laz so phenomenally, and it was just a moment that I'll never forget. What are games if not moments that make you smile, make you nostalgic, make you think to a fun, glorious day? Escapism isn't something I usually like to equate with gaming, because for me it is a fun act of it's active. I'm not escaping from life. I'm just enjoying life more. But I will say that all of these games had a moment where I did get lost in them, and something happened. Whether it was like that story about Evolve, or just falling in love with, the gameplay of God of War, the characters of Last of Us, the charm of Mario 3D World, and the perfected gameplay of Mario Kart. The world of Portal 2 as you literally dive beneath the surface. The horrors of Dead Space, and the spaceship that just doesn't seem quite right. The insane difficulty of Dark Souls, and the desire to keep pushing even when they steal it all. The accomplishment of Uncharted 4, the level of detail, and the mastery of a studio to hit it even harder the fourth time. These are the top 10 games of the decade for me. Mario 3D World, Portal 2, Dead Space 2, Uncharted 4, God of War, Mario Kart 8, Dark Souls, Last of Us, BioShock Infinite, Evolve. I think it's been a great decade. I want to point out that many of these games came in the first half of the decade. I think we've struggled lately. I don't want to go into a diatribe about where I think gaming is and what I think it needs to do, but we've gotten a little lost. In efforts to make so much money and amass so many players, games have lost some of their creative focus. Genius directors aren't as much of a thing anymore. It's massive teams. And yes, you can build massive worlds, but you can't replace the vision of one passionate person. And I hope we return to that a little bit. They always say it's a pendulum effect. It ebbs and flows. It'll go one way and then come back. We've expanded. We've bloated. Now let us come back. There's a reason that so many of these games win Game of the Year. There's a reason that so many of them are the most memorable, the ones that you want to look back on and play with your kids eventually. Share with your friends. It's fun to have the Fortnites and the Divisions and the Destinies of the world. But I think if there was a father of gaming, they would look down upon the decades, the cartridges and the discs, the digital files, and say, these brilliant visions, these works of art executed on a medium unlike any other, this is what gaming is meant to be. For me, that's how I feel. And I hope we continue to get experiences that really affect me in the ways that these 10 did, that make those memorable moments, that allow me to get lost in their world, that bring perfected gameplay and an insane amount of care and detail to the experience and the world they've created. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with me in this past decade. It's been a blast. Honestly, when I look at this list, I played all these games on the channel. Every single one. That's remarkable. A decade of gaming, and it's all there on the internet. How weird is that? How wild is that? Remember, in high school, I had a flip phone. In high school, my senior year, I had a flip phone. And here I am. We've got all digital consoles. I've got my entire top 10 games of the decade on display for the world to see. It is a wonderful, wonderful life. I'm so blessed and grateful and thankful for this past decade. I cannot wait to see where we go next. I can't even fathom the 10 games I'll pick. I can't even fathom. I'm sure there'll be a Nintendo title. I'm sure there'll be a Naughty Dog title. I pray BioShock 4 can hit it hard. Maybe Evolve 2 is around the corner. Honestly, this list could look very similar. There could be God of War 2 and a new Dark Souls like Elden Ring and Last of Us 2 and BioShock 4, Evolve 2, Mario Kart 9. Maybe it'll repeat itself, or maybe it'll be totally different. If you look at this current generation PS4, Xbox One, there weren't a lot of new franchise trilogies. Think about Xbox 360 with Dead Space and Mass Effect, with Gears of War, with the Arkham titles, Uncharted. They did so much. They brought us these trilogies, these characters we could learn to love and grow with. And then this generation, yeah, it didn't last as long, but they iterated, they expanded, they bloated, and they didn't just give us great worlds to live in for a long time. So I hope they do more of that. I hope you guys enjoy the list. Let me know your take in the comments down below. What is your favorite game of the decade and why? I want to know. Sound off. I'll be replying. Thank you for everything. I love you so much. Drink some hot chocolate. On to another decade, baby. 2020, here we come. We're tackling it with open arms, with fire in our eyes and in our hearts. I love you a lot. Until next time, we'll see you all alive.